Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Maria Parham, editorial page editor for the Arizona Daily Star. Tonight on AZ Illustrated Metro, we'll ask how issues with the state's Child Protective Services affect Southern Arizona kids. Then we'll learn about new technology that might improve the fire shelters firefighters use for protection in emergencies. We'll also visit some Tucson area residents and a school where chickens are part of the daily routine. Finally, we'll get an update from the Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation about the status of the disease in this community. But first, a look at today's top stories.
The Arizona Division of Occupational Safety and Health recommended earlier today that the State Division of Forestry be fined nearly $560,000 following the death of 19 firefighters battling the Yarnell Hill fire. The Arizona Industrial Commission agreed with that recommendation late this afternoon and imposed the fine in conjunction with the deaths of the Granite Mountain hotshots earlier this summer. Officials with the Division of Forestry issued a written statement saying they had not seen the final recommendations and would not comment at this time. The National Weather Service in Tucson has issued a freeze warning for tonight and early tomorrow morning. With this cold snap also comes an increase in usage of fireplaces and wood-burning stoves. Officials with the Pima County Department of Environmental Quality say the smoke from those fires can cause breathing problems in children, the elderly, and people with respiratory issues. DEQ officials are asking people to keep the burning to a minimum. And graduate students from the University of Arizona are asking members of Congress to end what they say is student loan inequality. They're calling members of Congress and the Senate because graduate students are no longer eligible for subsidized loans, and the interest rate for graduate student loans is higher than the rate for undergraduate loans. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Arizona's Child Protective Services Agency is under scrutiny for failing to investigate more than 6,000 reports of child abuse. To find out what some of the latest news means, we asked Penelope Jacks to join us in the studio. She is the Southern Arizona Director of the Children's Action Alliance. Penelope, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Can you start out by explaining the Children's Action Alliance and what its role is as an advocate for children in the state?
Sure. Children's Action Alliance, we are more than 25 years old now, and we are a not-for-profit, nonpartisan advocacy organization. And what we see ourselves as an independent voice for Arizona's children in the legislature and with decision makers and in the community.
So you're really stepping up in this whole issue with CPS then and becoming involved in it. Can you give us some background on how we got to this point in the latest CPS crisis?
You know, this is a new piece of a very old puzzle. This problem has been with us for as long as I've been with Children's Action Alliance, which is a long, long time. Every so often there's a crisis. And then we say, oh my goodness, what's to be done? But honestly, we've gotten here over a long, long time of cutting services to children, cutting services to families, eliminating all the things that help families stay together. And as a result, we have a huge influx of kids into the Child Protective Services system. In addition, it's a very, very hard job, and it's not being administered very well.
So let's talk about what's in the news right now.
Sure.
This is the admission that there are more than 6,000 cases that have gone uninvestigated. And then there's also a whole pile of paperwork and materials that were found dumped. Talk to us about what that means for the organization and for the children of Arizona.
Right, and you know the 6,500 cases that were marked not for investigation is just the tip of the iceberg. That doesn't count the 10,000 cases that are inactive, which means nothing's happened on them for 60 days, and the 12,000 cases that are open that should have been dealt with and closed. So the numbers are really very, very large. What's with those papers that were dumped, I don't know. But it's all a part of the same process of a system that is simply overwhelmed and where the workers don't get the support they need, and that everybody wishes it would go away. And the way to make it go away is mark something not for investigation, dump some papers, just say this is too much and try to make it look better than it is.
So this week, Governor Jan Brewer created a team of people to investigate the problem.
She did.
Do you think this is the right move? Does she have the right people on the team? Talk to us about the team and then the next steps.
Absolutely. I think it's a really important first step, and I'm glad she did it. There are now several different committees looking at CPS, and I hope that they find a way to share what they know and to work together so that they're not either duplicating or working across purposes. But I think it's a well-created committee. I think it's heavy on the law enforcement side, and I'd like to see some more participation of social work people, of children's people, but I think that it's a very good start.
So what role is the Children's Action Alliance playing now that this is all being investigated? I believe you had a forum last night in Phoenix. Can you talk to us about that?
We had a forum that we put together very quickly when all this crisis came to light, and 400 people came, more than 400 I think, many legislators, foster care parents, Charles Flanagan, who's the head of the governor's group to do this investigation, people who work with children, former CPS workers, so it was a huge, broad representation of the community. And the focus was really what's next. It's easy to be angry and want to blame somebody, but honestly that doesn't get us that far. Really the focus is what can be done to make things better for all these children and for this whole system. And there was a tremendous number of people who really want to focus attention on prevention services. And that's really our perspective too, that what the future should look like is not the way the past has looked. It should look like ways to keep kids safe and in the families they belong in.
So we were talking before we came in the studio about what happens in that area before children actually come into CPS care and they get into a crisis situation, and the money that's been taken away for those services. Talk about what those services were that aren't there now.
Absolutely, and that really, to me, is the crux of the story, honestly. The CPS is the end game. The real part of the story is keeping families together, keeping children safe in their families. So what families need is a safe place for children to go while the parents work. They need good child care. Since 2008, 74% fewer children receive subsidized child care than from working families than did. Where are those children? We don't know. Who's taking care of those kids? We don't know.
And at the same time, can that mean that their parents just aren't going to work, which makes
it can mean
the
that.
Housing and the food and everything else worse?
It can absolutely mean that, or it can mean the kids are home alone. We don't know. We also know that the services for victims of domestic violence have been cut. Again, so that those, generally women, are then on the street often, or have nowhere to go, and then the children are neglected. That's another place where services have been cut, and that children wind up in the CPS system.
Well, so the money is a big issue, and there's already been some pushback from the legislature saying, we're not going to give you any more money. You have plenty of money. What kinds of things do you see that need to happen to fix this situation? Is it people? Yeah. You've talked about more dollars, but where do those dollars need to go exactly?
If it were me, I would put the money at the beginning of the system in prevention services. Clearly, money has to go into the CPS process, and the governor has asked for that money. The legislature has in the past given some more money, and there's a huge backlog of cases. Those cases need to be dealt with. But honestly, if we don't want to see that tub keep filling with more and more cases, we need to turn off the tap at the beginning and make sure the kids are getting and families are getting what they need. So that's where I would put the money.
And what kind of support do you think you have for that? There are the people who talk a lot, but are there also some people who can influence it in another way?
I think It's a little early to say what the support for that is, but I think this is a window that, of opportunity through which really even people with quite different political perspectives, we're all looking through that same window and seeing such dysfunction in the system that I think this is a really good opportunity for people who don't ordinarily agree to say what can be done to turn off this tap.
Penelope Jacks, thanks so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's a very important topic, and I appreciate your looking into it.
New material developed for fire shelters could help wildland firefighters withstand higher temperatures for longer periods in emergencies. Andrea Kelly reports.
Arizona became acutely aware of the fallibility of fire shelters when 19 hotshot crew firefighters died in the Yarnell fire last summer. The fire shelters that every wildland firefighter carries can save lives, but not all the time.
Our current shelters are actually this is a new generation shelter that we have. So it's been upgraded once from what we used to use. It's still, obviously there are still some flaws with it in how it's able to protect us. It has been credited for saving a lot of lives, but there's still some room for improvement.
A man named Jim Mosley is hoping he's found that improvement. While touring an aerospace company, he saw the material it developed for use on objects that travel to space and must return intact despite the heat from re-entering the atmosphere. He had an idea to use the already developed material to make new fire shelters.
They introduced me to the National Forestry about 18 months ago. National Forestry loved the product, but they said, they really didn't have the funding to develop it. They wouldn't be looking at another one until 2015. And so I just kind of left it alone for a while. And then about 3 weeks after the Yarnell tragedy, I got an email from one of the directors, who was also one of the investigators on the Yarnell tragedy. And he basically said, "How are you doing on the testing?" And I said, "Well, the stuff works. It probably gives a firefighter 3, 4, 5 times the protection." So he said, "Look," he put me in communication with the testing center up in Alberta, Canada, and that's where we're at right now. And typically, the foil material will basically burn right through in just a few seconds. So that's what the firefighter's dealing with in a matter of seconds right there, okay? Okay, so now what we have now is the other side, the foil. It's treated with this 3,000 degree spray that we have. Cuts down the fumes, everything that goes through it. This alone really gives the firefighter 2 minutes of real protection. So this is what would go underneath the current fire shelter. So this blowtorch is hotter than any wildfire. It's probably about 2,700 degrees.
Talley is responsible for coordinating rural Metro's wildland firefighting crews who fight fires in Tucson and travel to fires in other states. He says reducing the heat coming into the shelters and the durability of the shelter material may increase their life-saving ability.
With the foil that's on them, that reflects about 85% of the radiant heat that's coming in, but there's still some convective heat that starts to accumulate. And so as time goes on and that fire intensity stays near the fire shelter, the temperature inside the shelter will raise. And as long as the shelter stays intact and is not touching the firefighter, it creates a more survivable situation, but obviously it's not always 100% effective.
So it's warm now on the other side. It's probably close to 160, 180 degrees. But when you take the foil and mix it, it's certainly a lot better than 1,000 degrees. It just came through,
It's just going to need, some more testing, and obviously there's a lot of questions to be answered and has to go through all the government testing before they're going to approve something like that. But I think that it's on the right track. I think it looks like it is certainly worth pursuing.
Mosley says there are also other applications for the materials, such as protecting structures from burning or protecting steel building beams from melting, like in the World Trade Center.
I mean, if you literally put a high temperature adhesive down on the plywood of your home, on your roof, and then put a ½ inch of this down, put this on your roof, and then the felt and your tiles, you could have burning embers blowing on your roof. You could have a burning tree blowing on your roof for an hour or two. It would never transfer enough heat through to the plywood to burn down your home.
You know, every year more and more people move out of the city and into that setting. And so if homeowners, and we have that technology, they can mitigate and take care of their house and do the prep work that needs to be done, and free firefighters to actually be able to fight fire and not have to babysit houses.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour. Fast food workers plan a nationwide strike to protest low wages. That's Thursday on the PBS News Hour.
When you order something online, there is a warehouse full of people rushing to get it to you.
One of the few times that you got breaks was when a printing machine broke down or the conveyor belt got jammed, and that would be your chance to sort of move your legs and try to get some blood circulating again.
A glimpse at work in a fulfillment center. That's on the next morning edition from NPR News.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg? In urbanized Tucson, it's both. The city has a small, growing community of people who keep chickens and sell eggs, from backyard coops to schoolyard flocks that help children learn. Ana Agostaska has the story.
Come here. Baxter. Come on. In.
Noel Floresca lives a mile north of central Tucson, and there he's been raising chickens for 14 years. It's not his first experience with these colorful creatures.
I grew up with chickens. Before, when I was young, I can butcher them. Now it's just like raising them for their eggs. And then when they're ready to retire, I just let them have their space. That's it. I don't do anything to them.
Floresca has a rooster and 17 hens of different breeds. He says chickens have personality and a unique way of interacting with each other.
Each chicken has their own character, and they have their pecking order. Each chicken has to have their, when to eat, when to drink, before they can just jump in. Oops, so it's fun. Did I startle you again?
Floresca collects eggs every day. He says newly laid eggs will last longer if they are not washed or put in the fridge right away.
When the eggs are laid by the hen, it has a protective coating, and that's an antibacterial coating. And you can leave it on top of the counter for 10 days, and then you can put it in the fridge. Then the way when you're ready to use it, then you wash it first. Another one.
Floresca says to keep the brood healthy, chickens need good living conditions.
You have 3 basic factors that you need for chickens: food and water source, good nesting box, and a roosting area. And you need to clean all of those all the time, especially the watering part if you want to have a good laying hen.
And that is how Flo Jacek on the east side of Tucson treats her chickens. She's a member of Zenhens, Sustainable Organic Urban Farming, a cooperative that sells eggs to local markets.
I moved to Tucson in 1974, and when we bought this house, I knew that I would like to have a garden. And then about 3 years ago, I met Kathy, who's our Zenhens manager, and she started talking about chickens, and so I said, I want to have chickens again, because I like my fresh eggs, and I like fertilizer from my garden.
Jacek says her philosophy is to live sustainably, and raising organic chickens is a part of it. Raising them organically is also a requirement to be a part of Zenhens.
You need to be able to raise your chickens on organic feed, and that includes any greens or household scraps that they might get. as well as the feed that you buy from either feed stores or wherever you obtain the feed. That needs to be organic. For people who want local, well-raised, well-cared for, organic produce and eggs, this is one of the answers.
She says there is more to raising chickens than just keeping them for eggs.
So there's a whole social aspect to chickens. They're fun and they get along with children, and children learn how to clean and take care of an animal and produce something that they can eat and have some connection with their food supply.
Here's our eggs. We sell these at the market.
To bring out these connections, teachers from Men's Elementary School build a chicken coop for the students.
All you gotta do is lightly pet them back here. Sometimes they might flap because sometimes they'll get nervous around new people.
We call that one gorda.
And sometimes, if you put your hand under them, it'll make them feel a little secure, that they know that they won't fall. So they'll be attracted.
The chickens are more than just pets at Manzo. They enhance what's going on in the classroom. In fact, Principal Mark Alvarez says the school uses chickens to teach math.
We didn't have the best math scores. So a lot of what we do in taking care of the chickens, the compost, the counting of the eggs, the graphing of the eggs, analyzing data, we use practical mathematics so that the kids could have more success in the classroom.
We had 4 tan eggs and then 3 green eggs.
Our kids are also given the ability to be able to take care of things. They take care of these animals. The responsibility goes further than that. It's more than just chickens. It'll get them to really take care of their environment. It gives them also the tools to be disciplined and dedicated to certain things that might arise, whatever career path they take.
Some of the chicken coops in that story will join a dozen others as part of the 6th annual Tucson Chicken Coop Tour this Saturday. For information, go to news.azpm.org. December 1st was World AIDS Day, but advocates for education and prevention work on the issue all year. Joining me in the studio now is Ethan Smith Cox with the Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation. Ethan, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
Start out by telling us just what the Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation does today, what kind of services it offers.
Sure. So in a nutshell, we're focusing on both caring for people that are living with HIV and AIDS. So we currently serve about 1,200 people who are living with HIV, as well as their immediate family members, and also stopping the spread of the disease in Southern Arizona. And so we do that through about a dozen comprehensive prevention programs, reaching out to different high-risk populations.
And who has AIDS in Arizona today, or in Southern Arizona? That would be where you'd have the statistics for it.
Right, so it's a great question. There's about 2,500 people in Pima County who are HIV infected right now. And our statistics, the layout of those numbers is very similar to the rest of the nation. We're still seeing the highest percentages of HIV infections in men who have sex with men, intravenous drug users, and populations of color.
So how many people are out there who may not know that they have it?
Yeah, the estimate is about, for every 3 people that do know that they're HIV positive, there's probably another 1 out there that does not know their HIV status is positive.
And is there a risk in today's world with the cure being so, or the treatment being so wonderful, really, and able to do so much and prolong lives, that the real fears about AIDS start to slip under the radar and people become complacent, really?
Sure, absolutely. And I think that since the late 90s, when really some what we think of as miracle drugs came along that help people live much longer lives and full lives with HIV and AIDS, we've seen a lot of the immediacy of the disease go away. And so the focus on it, the media that will get around it, the talk around it has really gone away. It's become, for a lot of people, they consider it a manageable disease. It is a manageable disease in a lot of ways, but it's still a disease that you don't want to get. And that's the bottom line for us is safe.
Well, now there was just a report out in the last few days from the Centers for Disease Control that said the number of gay men having unprotected sex is increasing. That's that's another aspect of that complacency. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that and what you might be doing to head that off?
Absolutely. It's frightening and it's frustrating that that's the case, but we know that there's a whole new generation of young gay men coming up who didn't live through the 80s, didn't live through the horrible images on TV every day, and so they're not quite as tuned into HIV and AIDS and how to really keep themselves safe from that. And for a lot of them, it's not as big as a concern as it used to be. So SAFE is really reaching out to those populations on a much more aggressive way to talk to them about, this is a disease that hasn't gone away. There is still a great deal of stigma surrounding the disease, but it still needs to be front of mind, especially for people who are in those high-risk populations.
Are there some specific places you go for outreach? Or?
Sure. So we'll definitely work with our existing clients to put the tools for prevention into their hands. A lot of the shift in focus for prevention has gone towards people who are already HIV positive stopping the spread of the disease. But we'll also still work with younger populations. We work within the charter school system. We work with after-school groups. We'll go anywhere that we can to spread the word about HIV and AIDS prevention.
Now, how do clients come to you?
It's a lot of different ways, but luckily SAFE's been in the community for now for almost 30 years, that we've earned the reputation that people know that we are the place in Southern Arizona to come for HIV and AIDS care. People will call. I'm amazed we get a lot of online people just emailing us through the website saying, I'll be in Tucson in a couple months and I have an urgent need, can you help me? So we have people coming to us through that. We also work with a lot of other agencies in Southern Arizona who know to send people our way if they're HIV positive and looking for help.
Well, there was more good news this week as part of World AIDS Day, where President Obama announced another $100 million that he's pledging toward AIDS research, and then that's going to bring in yet other money from around the world. How does that affect you here locally?
Well, it's incredibly exciting, no doubt. Anyone that's part of this fight against HIV and AIDS is excited about news where we're going to be looking even more aggressively for a cure. SAFE is not in the business of looking for the cure for AIDS, but the day that it happens, we're going to be dancing in the streets. We work every day to put our own selves out of business. That's really our goal.
Now, as far as AIDS, World AIDS Day, are there other things planned during the month then of sort of calling attention to it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of people have started to think of it almost as World AIDS Month. And so December, there's a lot of focus on HIV and AIDS matters. On December 14th, we'll be right here on the campus of the University of Arizona at the bookstore. Dr. Paula Fan will be accompanying on piano 3 different people in our community who are living with HIV and will be telling their stories. Very exciting event, and it's free and open to the public.
All right, and we'll be sure, Ethan, to put that on our website so that people can find out more information about it. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks so much for having me, Maria.
That's our show. To keep up with the latest news and watch the segments from this and other editions of AZ Illustrated, go to our website, azpm.org. I'm Maria Parham. Thanks for watching.